Hotarubi no Mori is a 45-minute OVA created by Brainspace. It's a simple yet deep love story. The premise is simple, the animation is simple, but it tells a story with such depth. This OVA shows us that we don't need hundreds of episodes to tell a good story. 45 minutes is a great length. It's not too short and gives you time to start, develop and conclude a story, but also short enough to sit down and watch without having to sacrifice your whole evening. It allows creators to tell a powerful story, and not have to focus on everything else. They can just create a nice world, add some nice characters and tell a good story. They don't have to spend time and money on other aspects like a longer series would. Hotarubi no Mori is a perfect example of how a 45-minute OVA should be done. The story is told through the memories of our main character, Hotaru Takagawa, as she rides the train. One summer when she was just 6 years old, she met and befriended a spirit called Jin. Though they became great friends, they couldn't touch each other as Jin would disappear if he ever touched a human. Every year she would revisit Jin and spend all summer playing with him. Due to Jin being a spirit, he ages just a fraction of the speed that humans do. So Hotaru soon caught up to Jin's age, and childhood friendship became love. The love story was a breath of fresh air from the normal romance anime. Because they couldn't touch each other, there was no pressure to make the love story a physical one. This gave them immense space to focus on creating a beautiful love story. The romance was developed in a special way. If you take out the physical relationship from a lot of romance anime, they become very shallow and boring. But with this love story, it was just good writing and good character development. Despite being only 45 minutes long, you feel as if you've watched a whole series with these characters. They make what is only 4 or 5 minutes seem like a whole story arc. By the climax, you feel very attached to both the characters. The story built up using each summer as a stepping stone. You see the relationship slowly change from friendship to love, and how the characters cope with it. Without giving away any spoilers, the climax to the story was brilliant. It was powerful, emotional, and really captured the tone of the story. I came out feeling extremely satisfied and very impressed. Overall, the story was very simple, but it didn't feel simple. They told the story with emotion and attachment, so I felt as fulfilled as I would if I watched the whole series. Like I said, Hotarubi no Mori is a great example of how you can make a story without having to spend lots of episodes developing everything. You could complain that the story wasn't as epic as other romance shows, or that there wasn't a confusing love triangle to drag out the story, but that wasn't what they were trying to create. They were trying to tell a story as a memory, to make you come out feeling as if the story was just a sweet memory for you also. And they succeeded at that. When I look back at the OVA, I get the feeling of nostalgia. Although I only finished watching it a week ago, I feel like it was all a distant memory. It really captures everything about the OVA. One of the main themes of the OVA is time, and how fast it moves. Throughout the 45 minutes you watch as summer after summer passes by. As soon as one season starts, it ends, greeting the next season. It shows us that we don't really have control over our time, and we should use the time we have enjoying ourselves, rather than worrying about how fast time is going. The characters showed us that time moves fast, and you need to create good memories while you can. There were only really 2 characters, our 2 main characters. As you can imagine, they got a lot of focus. Like the main plot, there wasn't a huge amount of in-depth backstory about the characters, but they were very well written and very relatable. In this OVA, the characters were the story, and the story was the characters. If you were to remove either of these elements, the OVA would break down. Thankfully, the writers done a great job of joining everything together. Both the characters worked well together. It was very enjoyable to watch them develop together. But I would have liked to see a bit more of Jin's development. It's not a massive complaint, but if I had to suggest something, it would be that. The animation was pretty standard Brainspace. They also created Natsume Yuchijo, and you can see the resemblance. The backgrounds, the animation, and the character designs were all very similar to Natsume Yuchijo. But I like that style. It's not too fancy or high budget, but it looks nice. Since most of the OVA took place in the woods, they had a lot of time to make it look nice. And they did. The backgrounds were pretty simple, but it worked well with the feel of the story. The character designs were again pretty simple. Jin even wore a mask for most of the story, so they didn't even need to animate his face. I loved how they only included Jin and Hotaru in the forest. They never included any other characters or wildlife. They could have made the forest busy with animals around every corner, but instead it was just Jin, Hotaru and a green forest. This made the story seem even more special. You just had to focus on the two characters, and they just had to focus on each other. The only standout thing in Hotaru's memory was spending time with Jin. Everything else seemed not as important. Remember that they were trying to make you feel as if the story was a memory, so overcomplicating things wouldn't have worked too well. They achieved what they were going for. That's not to say that there weren't any visually stunning scenes, in fact there were many. The carnival scene was brilliant, there was a lot going on and the scene was very detailed, and of course the climax scene looked magnificent. This scene was especially good as it was the most important memory, so it needed to stick out the most. They'd done a great job carrying on the tone of the story with the animation. It'd done everything it needed to back up the story. It wasn't too imposing, but you could still appreciate it. The soundtrack was like the animation. It was simple, but had sparks of obscurity. Most of the tracks were slow piano pieces that echoed the time passing through the story. Some had very soft vocals that worked really well with the feel of the story. But there were some faster paced tracks for the more fun scenes, and there was a few more obscure tracks. I especially liked the track that accompanied their trip to the carnival. The soundtrack wasn't by any means an epic, but it had a really nice variety of tracks that all managed to work well with the OVA's feel, and I would quite happily go back and re-listen to the soundtrack over and over again. Hotarubi no Mori E successfully achieved what it set out to do. It created a classic love story between two enjoyable characters, it smartly created a suiting world for the story to take place in, and finished everything off with a great soundtrack and fitting visuals. It showed us that you can tell an amazing story without having to spend lots of time. You can create something that feels like years have passed with only 45 minutes. You can get attached to the main characters within minutes and feel as if you've been watching their story for years. It makes you wonder why most seasonal shows take 4 or 5 episodes to get going and develop the characters, when it can be so easily done in 45 minutes. Hotarubi no Mori E puts a lot of anime to shame for this. This OVA is something that a lot of people watching this review will probably have never heard of, but should all definitely check out. If you're a fan of supernatural shows, romance shows, or just good storytelling, this should be an anime you need to watch, and it's only 45 minutes long. I would easily take this over a 12 episode high school moe show I've seen 100 times. I understand that sales aren't doing too well at this moment and it's hard to create something with such a low budget, but Hotarubi no Mori E shows that it can be done. If you did enjoy this OVA, I'll give you some recommendations of similar shows. Natsume Yuchijo is an obvious one. Made by the same studio, they could easily fit into each other. They're very similar in most aspects, but I would say Natsume Yuchijo is a little less serious and a lot more light-hearted. Mushishi is very similar in that it deals with spirits and has a very similar, mysterious feel. If you enjoyed Hotarubi no Mori E, you'll definitely enjoy these two. So this has been my review of Hotarubi no Mori E. If you have any thoughts on this OVA, I'd love to hear them in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to click on the like button and share it about. You can also click subscribe to see more of my reviews, or click one of the links on the screen. Thank you very much for watching.